Good afternoon. We're going to resume our general business, and we are going to now move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is a public hearing. This is a public hearing where the council will receive testimony on guidelines for the next operating budget. The council must adopt guidelines for the next operating budget by the second Tuesday in February. The spending affordability guidelines that must be adopted are a ceiling on the funding from a Valorum real property tax revenues, a ceiling on the aggregate operating budget, and separate budget allocations for all agencies and certain non-agency uses. A Government Operations Committee work session is scheduled for Wednesday, February 3rd. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the Council's consideration should do so before the close of business on January 28th. I don't believe there are any public speakers for this public hearing. And so this public hearing is now closed. That moves us on to item number 5. This is a public hearing regarding a supplemental appropriation to the county government's FY22 operating budget in the amount of $954,266 for incubator programs non-departmental account. A Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee work session will be scheduled at a later date. And I don't believe there are any speakers for this public hearing as well, and so this public hearing is now closed. We will now move on to item 6 on our agenda, which are interviews for the Charter Review Commission. I'd like to welcome and thank Mr. Sam Arthur, Ms. Mina Adaran, Ms. Anita Cox, and Mr. Brackett Smith for joining us this afternoon. We greatly appreciate your interest in this important position, for your civic responsibility, and for your willingness to step forward. I will now ask each of you a question that I will ask all of you to respond to. And at the end, my colleagues will have an opportunity to ask questions of you as well. So welcome again this afternoon. We are going to do this beginning in alphabetical order. So Mr. Arthur, you will be the first to respond, followed by Ms. Adaran, then Ms. Cox, and then Mr. Smith. And then we'll do a reverse order from there. So the first question is, please briefly discuss why you are interested in serving on the Charter Review Commission and explain what in your background will assist you in this role. Mr. Arthur, and everyone, I ask you to respond between 2 and 3 minutes, 4 max, so that we can get through all the questions. Mr. Arthur, you're up first.
Oh, first of all, thank you very much for offering me this opportunity and this interview. And to get straight to your questions, the first one you're asking why I'm interested in serving. Of course, as you know, as a resident of Montgomery County, I think it's my civic duty to participate in some of the civic affairs. And then also, I want to join this. I'm interested in particular to the Charter Review Commission because of my background, really, that I think I can add value to the Review Commission. First of all, I'm a certified public accountant, and I've done a lot of community related financial advisory, and also so I've done a lot of international business transactions as well. And I'm also very much in the minority business groups, and as you can see, more than 60% of the businesses in Montgomery County are minority businesses, and then we have a very large burgeoning immigrant community, which I'm very much part of. Actually, I'm part of the African Advisory Group. That we've been doing a lot of work for the minorities in the county, and I think with me as part of the review, with me as part of the Review Commission, I'll be able to bring bring up a lot of issues for discussions. And also, I'm part of the top of a lot of the minority professionals to hear about and I've been now in the areas of finance, accounting, and technology as well. And I do understand what sort of challenges that this huge sector of people are facing in the county. And I think with me on the board, I could help come up with different solutions and that the county can consider. Yes.
Thank you so much for that response, Mr. Arthur. Ms. Adoran, same question.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here and in great memory of Ruth Grinda. I feel the obligation to try and fill the gap she left behind by her untimely and unexpected passing. And I would like to continue try to fill the void left by her passing and continue her great legacy of public service. And as far as my background, I come from a background that was caseworker for the Department of Family and Children Services, and a lot of interactions with people in the community. I can connect with that. And also as an immigrant to America from the Middle East, I believe I am uniquely qualified, and as such, I can help to connect and articulate our objectives and policies, as well as bring a potentially different perspective to our discussions and conversations. And I think I will be an invaluable addition to the Charter Review Commission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and for your condolences as well. Appreciate that. Ms. Cox.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to the council members for advancing my application to this stage. I don't take this lightly. I take it as a massive chance to have an opportunity to be part of an organization or a commission that serves, the county. I've lived here for about 17 years. I always go by the age of my daughter because we moved here when I was about to have her. And I don't actually have a skill set that you could speak of in terms of career building, because I am a foreign service spouse. So I'm one of those we like to say in the foreign service, career in a suitcase, basically. So when you get to where you're going, you place your suitcase down, open it, and see what tool set do I have that can apply to whatever I'm seeking or whatever I feel I can contribute to. And so having lived and worked in lots of countries on 4 continents, I feel like I can probably contribute or bring my skill set to bear upon the work of the commission in terms of versatility and hard work. I've done lots of work across different portfolios that bear on immigration, that bear on economics, infrastructure. My whole background is economics. That's sort of what I always have done in the mainstream of things. But I just feel like, what I can bring to bear is basically applying good judgment. I believe in hard work. I believe in doing the homework and looking at the issues before us, because whichever country we go to, whatever portfolio I seek and get, I always manage to work my way to receiving some kind of recognition of a work well done, with the words kind of dedication, or just being able to see how to do things in a way that delivers whatever that goal is. And that's been different, whether Egypt, whether Bahamas, whether Morocco, wherever, I've been able to have the opportunity to work. So I look forward to an opportunity that will allow me to contribute to a county where, they say there's about 150 nationalities here. crisscrossed the world a little bit, seen a lot. I hope that that can help bring some kind of skill set that would help. Just last 1 second, I'm also a trained consular adjudicating officer, so I know how to apply the law to different situations, to read it, understand it, learn it. I trained at the National Foreign Affairs Training Center over there in Virginia. So legally speaking, I know how to decipher stuff to apply it to the relevant thing that we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and members of the council. My wife and I moved to Montgomery County in May of last year. We bought a house just outside of Tacoma Park, and it's been a cool opportunity learning about the county and learning about its government. And I'm interested in this opportunity with the Charter Review Commission because I have a lot of experience as a legislative attorney. Most recently, I was with the DC Council for 3.5 years, and work experience in state and local government. And I think I could use that background to contribute to the commission and its work, while also using that as kind of an opportunity to learn more about the government here and more about the county, its people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Apologies, had to move. Mr. Smith, we're going to start with you for the next question. What do you see as the most important issue facing the commission?
Well, now that I'm trying to join it, I think Section 509 is pretty important, but that's the Charter Review Commission section. But in recent years, I think the composition or the number of districts and having, districts versus, at-large districts, I guess, I think is the most important issue. I think that really goes to issues of who's represented, who has a voice, who has access to government. The difference between, like when I was in DC working for the council, the difference between the jobs of the ward members versus the at-large members was substantial. The issues they could take on, the issues they could introduce on, move legislation on, really affected their jobs. And so I think those are, critical issues to the county here. And I think adding the seats to the council is huge. As far as issues currently before the commission, I saw that there's a ballot question that has to do with, or there's not a ballot question, there's a question that has to do with, or an issue that has to do with ballot questions rather. And I think that's interesting, the idea that you have diametrically opposed ballot questions and how you would handle that. I think that would be an interesting issue to take up.
Thank you very much for that response. Ms. Cox, same question. What do you see as the most important issue facing the commission?
In preparation for this interview, I was looking at your November meeting and recognizing that you had, I guess, 3 things that you were looking at, trying to, I guess, bring to a point where you take them to the actual electorate. And I was sort of interested in what, Mr. Smith said about that 2 irreconcilable questions question, and, just how that is basically reconciled when it comes up. But I also took an interest in Section 206, the removal of the county executive by, 90%, that whole 90% that you're trying to come up with. And I think that, that would be something that I think would really interest me, that I would like to look at and understand a little bit better, how somebody who is elected by the people basically ends up sort of being removed from office by other elected people. So I think that one is important.
Thank you very much. Ms. Adoran.
Yes. Today, I'm here as a constituent. I'm not in the council, and other candidates have spoken well about issues that are various issues that the council is facing and as an issue for them. I would like to speak as a constituent, and it seems to me that in general today in America, and Montgomery County is no exception, with a population of more than 1 million people. I think that I would like to speak to the larger picture of the issues that are facing all levels of government. And that is the issue of inclusivity, and of course, the issue of diversity, and also being aware of the issue of people having trust in their government. So I think that is the overarching issue that is happening. And I think that as an immigrant, I can speak to that voice and I can hear that voice. And that will put me in a unique position to be able to bring those lenses and look from the eyes of someone who's actually an immigrant, and bring those kind of conversations to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arthur?
Yes, actually, this question is very interesting because it has two, you can answer it in two different ways. One is when, with the first two responses, which has to do with the last council report, or you can also look at it as what are the issues that the commission is facing, which I think that the last responded to that explained, and I think I agree with her really, and it has to do more with diversity. As you know, as you can see here, Montgomery County is burgeoning in diversity. We have all these different ethnic minorities that are out there, and one of the biggest challenges really that I think is the committees to have commissioners with such backgrounds who can really reach out there to those communities and bring bring about issues that will help the county, and at the same time to bring their own issues really, and just as the last respondent said, inclusivity really, because we have the African community, the Eastern European, the African American community, and all these different communities really. And that's where I come in, because I've been working a lot with such community, and I could help the commission come up with give them feedback as to what's going on over there. Yes.
Thank you very much for that response, Mr. Arthur. I think you touched on this in your response just now, but you're up first again for this next question. And the question is, how would you position the board to work on racial equity and social justice issues?
Racial equity, and well, mainly though, typically, excuse me, I think I went off screen for a minute. Uh-oh. I'm off screen, I don't know why.
Oh, we can see you and hear you.
Oh, you can see me, but I can't see anyone. Okay, sure, all right. Okay. Okay, so basically, in terms of
now you are off screen. I apologize. I don't know why.
Yes, start my video. Okay, let me start again. Let me see. Sorry.
There you are.
It has come. But I don't see anybody in it. But yeah, it's okay. Basically, this racial inequality and social injustice, it's more systemic, and your question is that how will position the commission. Basically, it's more to do with doing more outreach, and I have already laid some form of ground already there to handle such issues, and it has to be able to it has to ensure that the commission is able to reach out to all the various ethnic groups, all the various even different genders, different professional groups, and then also even on the education side to be able to reach out to the schools that have a lot of minority focus, and then to be able to interact with them, collaborate, and then find out what the exact issues are.
Thank you very much for that response, Mr. Arthur. Ms. Adoran, same question. How would you position the board to work on racial equity and social justice issues? Some of this you touched on your last response as well, but if you'd like to expand on that.
Yes, regarding the social justice and racial equity, I think this is a three-pronged issue. Those of policy, messaging, and of course the issue of representation, with representation being the bedrock of both policy and messaging. So as far as policy, we need to balance fiscal responsibility with taking care of the vulnerable among us without driving away opportunity and growth that provide the underpinnings of our ability to provide services to the population. And if selected, I look forward to having these discussions with the council to help weigh the pros and cons of each decision, with the goal of growth in mind when preparing those commission reports that contain those recommendations and those amendments. And as far as messaging, many times we have sound policies that are good, working really good towards the long-term benefit of our constituents, but we are not able to articulate them well to the public. So the public becomes oftentimes disillusioned or cynical. We need to make sure that the public knows that we care. The old saying goes, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So we need to make sure that the public knows we care and that we are working hard to balance these issues and make good long-term decisions. As far as representation, what is good policy and good messaging without representation? Again, as an immigrant to America from Middle East, I believe I am uniquely positioned to first help to connect with the public and help to drive the message home, help to articulate our objectives and policies, and as well as bring a potential different perspective to our discussions by way of my diverse background. And again, I'm uniquely positioned to drive the message home. And thank you for this opportunity, for this great question. Thank you.
Ms. Cox, same question. How would you position the board to work on racial equity and social justice issues?
So I last served on a commission or a board here before we moved from here to go and live in India for a few years. And on the Community Partnerships Board, I remember having this question. Of course, this question is now just a lot more accentuated in today's environment. But even back then, these issues were always sort of there, kind of simmering. But I remember in the community partnership board there, it was Mr. Leggett that pointed me to that. I was very strong on the financial literacy aspect, the whole issue of access, for that particular board. For this board, I'm looking at what the focal point of our work is. If appointed to this commission, it's to review the charter. So while I know that racial equity and diversity and the social issues that come with that are important, and we must be attuned to them and conversant with them in order to be able to, know how to handle them when they pop up, I'm looking at this work as something that sort of attunement has to be an underlying principle of how we do what we do, so that we're not, oblivious, we're not dealing with it. When we see it in the contours of the work, as you're reviewing the charter, or as you see things that come up, you want to always have that lens to look at and know, am I seeing this? And in my work also, as for my small nonprofit that I have, I started the US Africa Schools Partnering Initiative, as something, again, that underlying that principle was the whole thing of authentically reach out. How do you authentically reach out to these, these demographics that you don't ordinarily have in your own purview in the line of your work? So I look at it as an important underpinning of the work of reviewing the charter, and when issues come up that you think might bear upon it, because this is nuts and bolts work of just researching and reading and seeing what the lay of the land is. So I look at it very much as the bedrock of what you do, as having it innately as an underlying principle. That's kind of my view of this question in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
I think my answer is sort of similar to Ms. Cox's, but obviously I hope I add to the Commission's consideration of racial equity and social justice. As far as enhancing it specifically on the Commission, I think it really goes to when and how meetings and listening sessions are held. For example, I used to work in affordable housing in DC, and when we would have hearings, where we had them in the city and the time of day we had them really had an effect on who participated, and so whose voices we ultimately heard and entered into the record. And where we were in town could have a huge effect on that. So I think that's essential for the Commission to consider when it, is just trying to hear from folks on the issues before it. As far as my background goes, I'm the son of a social worker and a criminal defense lawyer. And so I think social justice and the importance of empathy with people has been part of my life from the beginning. And I like to think I've brought that to my work and life by, where I've lived in the area here. I like to think I've been part of diverse communities, and working in local government is certainly diverse. And you get a ton of perspectives in it, and it has given me, I like to think, for example, I've considered racial equity myself, but there have been times where I didn't realize that I wasn't considering it until a coworker, somebody I was dealing with pointed it out to me or helped me realize that. Just as an example, I think of like the Suitland Parkway in DC, and there was a story a couple of years ago about folks crossing it and getting hit by cars, and I thought, who are these people trying to run across a highway? And never really considered the fact that there was a highway bisecting them from like groceries and other goods, and they didn't really have a way to cross the street. So my initial thought was thinking, what's wrong with them for running across a highway? But I later learned it was really, what's wrong with us for not giving them a way to get across the highway? And why did we do this to this community? And realizing my lack of empathy and lack of critical thinking on that issue is kind of eye-opening. And it has been, on any number of others over time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, very much for that response. The final question is there any actual or potential conflict of interest or anything else in your background for which the council should be aware? And Mr. Smith, the first question goes to you on this one.
Sure. I don't think I have any conflict of interest. I work for the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. We're a regional body, and we're part of an interstate compact, and so Maryland is one of the states we represent, but I don't anticipate any conflicts there. I do want to say I was a registered Democrat up until applying for this position. I looked at the rules and it seemed like I'm in compliance as far as my application goes, but and I am currently unaffiliated, but I want to point that out in case that does raise any issues.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Cox.
No, I don't have any issues that I think would prohibit me from taking on this position. As somebody who's worked in jobs that required a lot of diligence, obviously in senior government levels, and also myself having worked as a background investigator, I know that very question very well, that you sort of ask at the end and see if there's anything there. But no, there isn't really anything that I think that would prohibit me from, being able to work on the commission.
Thank you, Ms. Cox.
Thank you.
Hatterman.
Yes, no, I do not see any potential or actual background issues or conflict. None.
Thank you. Mr. Arthur?
No, I don't see any conflict. I mean, my focus is financial audits, and all my clients are with the federal government, and I don't have any political positions anywhere. It's just that, of course, I did state in my application that I'm a registered Republican, I think I followed all the requirements in the application. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Arthur, for that response. So thank you all again so much. Your responses were very helpful. I have Chair of our Government Operations, Ms. Navarro. Ms. Navarro.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I really do want to thank all of you for applying and for your interest in public service. I particularly just wanted to say that, whoever we do select, I hope that those of you who are not selected continue to apply, because it is so important, and I think we're so fortunate. But specifically, I think whoever is selected really, this question about racial equity and social justice is really important, given who we are in Montgomery County and how this particular body does make particular proposals and recommendations that have, significant impact in our communities. And it's not often that, especially our very diverse communities, are necessarily informed or necessarily understand. Sometimes there are agendas out there and they tend to present the issue in a way that benefits the agenda versus really engaging in an authentic way, which many of you mentioned many of these communities. So I wanted to say that, because I do think that sometimes we don't believe that in a particular body such as this one that reviews the charter, that doesn't intersect, but it does, because at the end of the day, it's all about who we are. And we are a county that is majority of color. Therefore, we should be, exercising whatever we do through that lens in order to be able to do our job effectively. So thank you so much to all of you. And I look forward to the deliberation and taking a vote.
Thank you. Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I just also want to extend my appreciation to the four of you for putting yourselves forward. And as we talk about the incredibly diverse community that we live in, I think the four of you as finalists, signify and show that diversity. And I'm proud to see all of you here with us this afternoon. The question I had was briefly alluded to by Mr. Smith in one of his responses about the future work of the commission. The commission every now and then tends to talk about the makeup of the council. And we are preparing for the council to increase by 2 council members to go from 9 to 11 by adding 2 districts. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about adding 2 districts and increasing the size of the council, and what you think that might mean for representation, because that was the result of a charter amendment. And so just curious your thoughts on this.
Why don't we start with Mr. Arthur and then go down our list alphabetically again. Mr. Arthur?
Well, basically, I'm in line with increasing the number of districts because I think currently I think we have about 260 people per council member, and if it's reduced, if the number of districts are increased, it will go down to about 160 plus, which will be much more manageable. So I think it's a very great. We're standing up, not considered all the aspects to it, and I've not had the opportunity to fully know the exact pros and cons, but overall, in appearance, it looks like it will be an excellent idea.
Thank you, Mr. Arthur. Ms. Adoran.
Yes, I second Mr. Arthur's opinion. I believe that is better, and it will go a long way towards representing the public. We have an extremely diverse community, Montgomery County. We have a lot of immigrants, recent immigrants, and who are hardworking members of the community. And I think we have having more districts that where these constituents can be hands-on, more active in their local communities. It will serve the public better in terms of knowing messaging. They feel like they're heard and they can participate fully, and they could actually play a role in those policies that we would like to have. Created and promoted, and that would actually reflects the needs of the community. So I am for that, and I think that's a good idea going forward. I understand that's the future. Yeah, I will vote for that. I think that goes towards reflecting the public.
Thank you. Ms. Cox?
Yes. In terms of adding 2 more seats to the council, I couldn't think of a better way to better represent a group of people or a populace that's growing. I happen to work on the census that just concluded, and the way I worked on it actually is kind of a roundabout way. It was for my son who was taking a gap year, and he had applied for a position that ended up not happening. And so I saw the census application. I said, well, this looks like good money. You ought to apply. And being a homemaker myself, I thought, we could do this together. What a fun way to hang out with my teenager. And we could just go and do the census and meet people and, that way. So he ended up not being hired. I ended up being hired. And I said, well, you know what? I'll do it and I'll give you the money. So that's the deal. But I say that to say that I knocked on doors, I talked to people, I got the information, and what you actually saw behind the door was a lot of people that, that do need representation. I was surprised how many people didn't even know that the census was happening. But, when those statistics come out and they actually show that the population has grown, then yes, you have to provide the correct representation. To use an African analogy, it's like saying you're trying to eat off a plate of food with one finger. That will never work. You've got to have more than that to be able to reach in and get what you need in terms of the people, because representation is about serving. So you've got to have, adequate capacity to serve. So 2 more seats, yes.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Smith.
Sure. As I said earlier, I think having more seats and just adding the number of districts does wonders for representation. There'd probably be an argument made for more seats even, but that's probably a future issue. I think it does make it easier for, to get a diversity of perspectives in a body, especially when you have communities as diverse as the ones you find here in Montgomery County and in different parts of the county. It also gives the opportunity for people to get closer to their government. I mean, if a council member is representing, 250,000 people versus, just number off the top of my head, 100,000 people, there's a much better chance of an interaction, both for a constituent with the council member, but a council member with that specific community or group within their district. And I think that goes a long way toward more perspectives being considered.
Thank you all for your thoughtful responses. And again, I appreciate you all applying to the commission. And however this unfolds, I do encourage you all to stay engaged and be a stronger fabric of Montgomery County life. Thank you all.
Thank you, Council Vice President Glass. Councilmember Jawando, you're going to have the last word.
Thank you. Also, just want to give my appreciation to everyone who's applied. Very impressed with your preparation today. And also want to say we have 90, I don't know, I always forget the number because it changes, but we have a lot of boards and commissions. Some of you have already served on some. And I would second and third the motion that I hope all of you stay engaged. One very, hopefully it won't take you long to answer this. Our county charter is the equivalent of our Constitution right here in the county. And it's, the oldest in the state. It vests in the council. Thankfully, we're all happy about this, a lot of authority, and sets up a balance of power in the structure of our government, right? And how we hear from residents and how we fulfill their will based on our, representative government. My question to you is, do you think the balance of power and the way that the charter is currently construed and who has the authority to do what, i.e. we have all the land use authority on the council. We pass the laws, the county executive proposes the budget, but we pass it. Do you think that's the right structure and that is the way it should stay, or do you think that's something that needs to be reviewed? That's a question for each of you.
And why don't we go in reverse alphabetical order this time, Mr. Smith?
Like this is the hardest question. I think that's a question I'd need to study a lot more before giving a good answer to it. It's a complex one. I do think in my experience, the lines between executive and legislative authority are important to consider, and there can be gray areas there, or areas where each side tries to push the other. As a general matter, I do think having a strong legislative presence is good. The bulk of my work experience has been with legislative bodies, so I tend to be a supporter of a strong legislative body. With that being said, I think a lot of the day-to-day matters that an executive is charged with carrying out works better running probably through one person or through a reporting system that ultimately rests with one person. So as far as answering, I guess, the specifics, like with regard to land use and whatnot, again, I don't think I'm in a position to answer that just yet, but I hope by serving on this commission, I develop that perspective and learn this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cox?
Sorry. In terms of the balance of the structure of the charter, in preparation for this meeting, I was actually speaking to people who've served on it and also people who are obviously currently on it. And that's something they didn't raise, which is interesting in terms of there could be a structural thing there that could need to be or should be looked at, or perhaps potentially could be looked at. So without knowing all the different elements that constitute that balance you're talking about, it's really difficult for me to give an answer that would do justice to your question. And but I do know that when I was looking around on the internet and looking around at the sorts of things that we would do, and talking to people who work on this committee and have worked on the committee, I that's not something that sort of came across on the radar. So I'm wondering if there's a structural thing there that people are missing, or but that's something that I would absolutely be willing to look into and learn more. And as soon as we click off on here, because I'm going to go and look at your question, Councilmember Joanda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, I'm not suggesting we change it. I just want to know your view.
Okay.
but go ahead. But go ahead. I don't know if it's Mr. Arthur or Mr.
Ms. Adoran is next, followed by Mr. Arthur.
Yes, I would like to second the previous responses. I'm not in the council now, and I'm not well familiar with those issues, but I'm open-minded. If there's a need, I'm willing to take a look, and we need to be vigilant and look at our policies and update them as we go. We are facing ever increasing, changing world today. So obviously we need to stay abreast and change things as stay fit. But for me as a constituent speaking here today, I would not be able to give an answer to that, but I would be willing to take a look and listen to people, like I said, bring my unique perspective and work on my messaging and reach out and talk to people and see if it needs to be changed or updated or whatever that needs to be done. That's my position.
Thank you. And then finally, Mr. Arthur.
Well, I agree with the other three other panel. I mean, we're not really until we get under the council, under the commission. It'd be very difficult to be able to have a closer look at this balance. But of course, almost in every government setup, there's always that little friction between the executive and the legislative, and then there are other gray areas too, where there could be some form of what I call trespassing into other areas. But at the end of the day, though, I think since for the last 5 years or there's been huge challenges. In this country, especially in this county as well. I guess it's something that could be looked at, and then some of the areas that things worked, it could be kept, and then other areas too, there could be some form of review, because things are evolving all the time. So what used to work 10 years ago might not work now, and if we think it's about time for us to have a critical look, we can now have a critical look and look at the strength of the current system, the weakness of the current system, any opportunities to improve it or anything, So I can't say yes or no, but I think if we think it's worthwhile, I think it's worthwhile having a look at it. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. A living, breathing document. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the responses, and thank you all again for your willingness to serve. We will follow up with you shortly. So thank you, everybody. We now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is to sit as the district council session. There are two items, both hand votes. The first is a work session in action, and the first one is rules of procedure for conditional uses and waives for certain telecommunications towers and objections to applications for waivers for certain telecommunications towers before the Office of Zoning and Administrative Hearings. Ms. Nadeau, I turn it over to you to walk us through this item.
Mr. Chair, maybe I could just say a brief comment.
That would be great. Thank you. Chair Reamer, please, if you could tee it up.
Thanks so much. We passed ZTA 1907 maybe a year ago. And this is an implementation regulation of that ZTA, which was intended to ensure that the county would not be left behind in the expansion of wireless services upon which we're all, so dependent. This is a regulation, so we don't make amendments to regulations. It's an up or down. And what we have here is OZA, the Office of Zoning and Hearings Appeals, telling us how they will implement our zoning text amendment. We created a certain process through that zoning text amendment that will provide for a resident input and an objection process, while at the same time ensuring that we meet federal requirements for how fast we have to be able to move through the process. So we found that balanced approach to preserve community input, meet federal requirements. This is OZA telling us, okay, here's the regulation explaining how we'll do that. So again, not something we would amend. With that, I'll turn it to Ms. Nadeau.
Good afternoon, council members. So as Chair Eamer said, last summer, the council passed ZTA 1907. And the two things that happened in that ZTA that required changes from OZA is first that the council chose a modified conditional use process for towers under 30 feet, under a 30-foot setback, as well as the waiver and objection process for a height up to 50 feet and for new towers. And so last year's ZTA removed the requirement for planning to provide a recommendation. It limited the findings that the hearing examiner would be making. It allowed consolidated applications, established a smaller radius for the notice requirement, as well as a long list of application requirements. So those are things that were not in OZA's rules of procedure previously. Council staff reviewed the proposed rules and compared them to the ZTA and found the rules consistent with everything that was in the now updated zoning ordinance. So specifically, the rules lay out exactly how that waiver and objection process is going to go, as well as how the application should be submitted. So some rules of note: records of all applications will be available for the public to review by appointment. There's a lot of guidance in the rules for satisfying the application requirement, including sources for finding all the information needed for the mailing list, since notice has to be sent to all residents and associations within 300 feet of the proposed and alternate tower. There's a requirement that GPS coordinates have to be provided for both of those towers. Objections are going to be allowed to be filed electronically, and there's guidance on everything that an objection must include. There's rules for parties of record. I know that came up in some of the opposition. The rules for parties of record are consistent with prior rules. Any applicant, individual, organization who testifies at an OZA hearing becomes a party of record. And anyone who demonstrates that their interests are not already represented can also become a party of record in advance of the hearing by requesting that from the hearing examiner. In addition, extensions and pre-hearing submissions are going to be permitted, again, at the discretion of the hearing examiner. And as of this date, to provide some updates, I know there's been a lot of discussion about circuit court, about a DC circuit case last year. So that decision came out in August, and what that decision did is it did not reverse the FCC order. So as of now, we still have to comply with it, which was the impetus for ZTA 1907. What the court did do is it remanded the case and asked the FCC to provide a reasoned explanation for its determination that its guidelines protect against any harmful effects of exposure to radiation. The court specifically said that it wasn't taking a position on that scientific debate, just that they'd like the FCC to provide more explanation, but they did not reverse the FCC order itself, and they did not give the FCC a deadline for providing that explanation. But as of now, ZTA 1907 is in effect, but there's no way for anybody to apply without first amending OZA's rules and fees. So I'm available for any questions. I also have Ms. Hannon here, the OZA director, who can answer any questions as well.
Well, thank you, both Chairman Reamer, for that context. This, of course, was a greatly debated ZTA with a lot of very thoughtful testimony. And I thought that the committee made some really strong recommendations for amendments that were eventually enacted that addressed many of the concerns raised by the community. And I appreciate the context, Ms. Nadeau, over the current court cases that are being deliberated on right now and providing some clarity on where those court cases stand and what in fact is being reviewed. So I do see that Councilmember Katz would like to speak. So Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I'd like to thank Ms. Nadeau, as well as all the public that has sent in all of their thoughts and emails and other findings as well. As many might recall, I did vote originally against 1907. I still am against 1907. I think we didn't do it the way that I would have liked to have seen it being done. Excuse me, to have seen it being done. And therefore, I will vote against this as well. Thank you very much. Oh, and one other thing, I did want to point out, in many of the emails that we received, it should be noted that this legislation has no effect in any of the municipalities in Montgomery County that have zoning authority. This is for those areas that are outside of those municipalities with zoning authority. Not every municipality has zoning authority, but I think that needs to be pointed out as well. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Hucker would like to speak as well. Councilmember Hucker.
Oh, just quickly, I hear what Councilmember Katz is saying. I felt like, on the advice that I got from our attorneys that we were sort of boxed in and had to do something with ZTA 1907, but especially given the lack of clarity from the FCC about its own cell tower rules, I'm very appreciative of all Ms. Hannon's work, but I'd like to see more clarity and not move forward as quickly. So, and I think it's concerning somewhat that it was sent over without more an update on the case. So I've heard from municipal officials that have concerns about it in my district as well, and for that reason I'm going to end up voting against today. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Hucker. Seeing no other comments from colleagues, Ms. Nadeau, we need a motion, is that correct? Could I get a motion to move this item forward?
Let's approve the amended regulation, or the proposed regulations from OZA to implement what we all know we need, which is more wireless service in Montgomery County.
Is there a second?
Someone's got to second it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Glass. Any discussion beyond the discussion we've already had? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All right, that is Council Members Reamer, Glass, Jawando, Navarro, Friedson, Rice, and myself all voting in favor. And those opposed? Council Members Katz and Hucker are opposed. The motion passes 7-2. That takes us to the second item, which is also work session and action. These are additions to OZA's fee schedule. Mr. Reamer, did you want to talk about this as well before turning it over to Ms. Nadeau?
I'll just turn it to Ms. Nadeau. I believe everything's the same as the, what was said earlier. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nadeau?
So similarly, fees have to be added for conditional uses and waivers for these towers. So the proposed conditional use fee is $2,600 and the proposed waiver fee is $690. And then I just want to note that in order to not hinder public participation, there's not going to be a fee for the objections. So you'll notice if you look at the fee schedule that right above the $2,600 amount is a much higher $16,000 application fee. That's for the the large 100-foot giant towers. So that's not these small cell ones. So the way the fee was calculated is OZA worked with planning to come up with an estimation of the costs. So the costs are based on the estimated number of hours it takes to complete the various tasks using the employee's hourly rate, as well as operational costs for things like transcripts and postage in particular, because notices are going to have to be mailed to all the residents and organizations within that 300 feet. So this fee was based on a lot of the things that were modified in the conditional use process in order to meet the FCC's 90-day shot clock. So planning won't be doing its usual detailed review, so they'll only be taking 15% versus 25% of the fee. The view shed is obviously much smaller for a 50-foot pole than for a 100-foot tower. And because of that, OZA anticipates shorter hearings. And then the hearing examiner's findings are more limited, which means both the hearing and the time to issue the report could be shorter. I want to make sure to note that the FCC order states that fees are permissible if they're a reasonable approximation of the state or local government's costs to process and manage the rights of way. So that's how OZA came up with the fees. I do want to make sure to note that FCC determined that the presumptive lawful fee is actually $500, but OZA and planning have estimated that their costs will be higher than that, so we should still be within the FCC order. And that's it for that overview, unless there are questions.
Seeing no questions from colleagues, could I get a motion to move this action forward as well?
Oh, thank you. Councilmember Navarro moved it. I'll second it.
By Councilmember Navarro, seconded by Councilmember Reamer. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Once again, that is myself, along with Councilmember Reamer, Glass, Jawando, Navarro, Friedson, and Rice voting in favor of the motion. Those opposed? Councilmember Katz and Hucker opposed. So it passes 7-2. Thank you, Ms. Nadeau, and thank you for joining us, Ms. Hannon. All right, we moved on to the last item on the agenda, which is a proposed closed session. I will need a motion to meet in a closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice pursuant to Maryland Code General Provisions, Article 3, 305B7, and to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation pursuant to 305B8. The topic is all pending litigation involving the county. Can I get a motion to move into closed session, please? Moved by Councilmember Katz.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Reamer. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Councilmember Rice, I assume you're raising your hand? Yes, so that is unanimous. We will now move to closed session. Thank you all very much.
Southbound I-270 from All 100 Road, Merrill 109 to the truck scales.